Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deanne Bernard, and I'm the CEO of the Rural Development Network. So I want to extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to this, our 15th annual general meeting of the Rural Development Network. It's with great pleasure that I stand before you today to kick off this culminating event where we are gathering to celebrate the spirit of unity, empowerment, and progress in rural and Indigenous communities across Canada. And first, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional lands on which we gather. Those of us attending in person are gathered together in Amiskwatiwaskagan, known as Beaver Hills House or Edmonton. We are located on Treaty 6 territory and within the Métis Nation Region 4. I thank our hosts, the Nehiawak Cree, Saulteaux, Niitsitapi Blackfoot, Red River Métis, and Eyahe Nakota, whose traditional lands we stand upon today. There are a few things to note before we start. RDN always strives for inclusivity, so we are holding a hybrid AGM to allow us to connect to members, partners, and interested parties from all over Canada. And we are recording this AGM. For those who have joined us in person, we look forward to spending time with you in a networking event that will follow the formal part of our program. This will provide an excellent opportunity to forge new connections, share experiences, and strengthen the bonds that make our networks so vibrant and important and impactful. For those of you attending virtually, thank you for joining and participating. Please remember to keep your microphone muted during the presentations and whenever you're not speaking. There will be time for a Q&A after the presentations. For our virtual guests, please put any questions you have in the chat box. And finally, the washrooms are just down the hall. This year, our AGM takes on a special significance as we come together under the theme, Empowering Rural and Indigenous Communities, Building Stronger Futures Together. This theme embodies our unwavering commitment to forging stronger bonds and collaborations with these remarkable communities. It reflects our belief that by working hand in hand, we can create a brighter, more sustainable future for all. It also reflects one of the things I am most proud of, RDN's commitment to reconciliation and to working with Indigenous communities. It really began in earnest in early 2022 with the hiring of our Indigenous liaison, followed by the creation of our Indigenous engagement team. I have always felt that as much as possible in a small organization, that the makeup of RDN staff should reflect the population of rural Canada. While we can always improve, I am proud to say that more than 12% of our staff currently identify as Indigenous. And I believe this is an important step towards creating better connections between rural communities, whether they be municipalities, reserves, villages, or settlements. I hope you will find today's program and presentations both engaging and insightful. We will highlight the many achievements and milestones that we, as an organization, have reached over the past year. These accomplishments are a testament to the dedication and hard work of our staff, members, and partners. We will also speak to our initiatives for the upcoming year, demonstrating our continued commitment to making positive impacts in rural and Indigenous communities. We will also have the pleasure of hearing from our guest speaker, Jessica DeVries from the City of Airdrie. Once again, I extend my warmest welcome to each of you. Thank you for being part of the work of the Rural Development Network, and I hope you will find this to be a productive and inspiring AGM. And now I want to tell you a bit about the Rural Development Network. So we are a not-for-profit organization that works across rural Canada. We focus on rural sustainability and creating tangible community impacts. We understand that rural communities have unique needs, challenges, and opportunities. Many existing programs are created and delivered in urban centers, but they often don't serve or cannot be delivered in the same way in rural communities. This is because of the different realities of the social and economic structures and the infrastructure that exist or often do not exist in many smaller communities. There are some ways RDN works to support rural Canada, although our focus areas change over time. We create innovative tools and resources, including guides, toolkits, and training that are created in partnership with rural communities and organizations and are specifically designed for rural communities. We provide expertise and boost the capacity of communities so they can implement their own projects. We advocate on behalf of rural stakeholders and help connect people to resources and information through events and networks. And we support groups with accessing funding, which is often one of their biggest barriers. Of course, we would not exist without our members. These 5 remarkable institutions were instrumental in our creation and have steadfastly stood by us for the past 15 years. We owe them a debt of thanks. 4 of them are here today. Our board chair, Kevin Shufflebotham, who is the president and CEO of Medicine Hat College. Our treasurer and past chair, Nancy Broadbent, who is the president and CEO of Portage College. Our vice chair, Dina McMartin, who is the vice president of research at the University of Lethbridge, and Ed Pajor, who's a professor with the University of Calgary. I would also like to thank and acknowledge our advisory board members, who are individuals from across the country who live in and work to support rural Canada. As I mentioned previously, RDN's initiatives and services evolve over time to respond to changing community needs and priorities. Many of our current service areas are shown here, and you'll be hearing more about them from some of our staff. To start off, I wanted to provide a bit of context about the work we do and why we do it. I think we can probably all agree that almost everything in our communities is interconnected and that almost everything impacts something else. As an analogy, it's a bit like a 3-legged stool. You can't neglect one of the legs or the stool will collapse. In this case, the legs are the local economy, the social well-being of residents, and the environment in which they live. So to illustrate, when the local economy is doing well, we need more workers. Workers often come with families, all of whom need access to both private and public services. They need schools, healthcare, daycare, professional services, shops, restaurants, and of course, entertainment. This in turn further improves the economy, meaning we need more workers and the cycle continues. And of course, everyone needs an appropriate, safe, and healthy place to live. The environment affects everything. So we must address social issues if we want our economy to thrive. But social issues can only be adequately addressed if our economy and our communities are healthy. At RDN, we believe that addressing all 3 aspects in balance, the social, economic, and environmental, is the key to rural revitalization. And this means addressing things using a holistic approach. And that approach needs a reconciliation lens. Reconciliation requires ongoing learning and personal growth, and RDN staff are working to integrate its principles into our work, align our programs with the goals and recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and take meaningful action in our journey towards reconciliation. So I would now like to invite Bill Neufeld, RDN's Indigenous liaison, to share his thoughts on RDN's reconciliation journey.
Check one, check two. Nice. Well, Alan, thank you so much from our matriarch at RDN, one of our matriarchal leaders. Yeah, my name's Emil Neufeld. I'm Mi'kma'ki from Unama'ki, and one of my puzzle pieces, which that makes up of, is I believe it's one of my portions, one of my responsibilities within reconciliation to find a way to get people together, to think and to talk about some of the things that have happened in our connected histories together on this land on Turtle Island. I believe reconciliation is made out of a lot of different puzzle pieces that each and every single one of us has to try and make ourselves. May that be in our programs and in RDN as a whole. How do we affect, such a massive thing with such small pieces? We build it one thing at a time. Each and every single one of us has to learn and take part in building one of those puzzle pieces within ourselves to make up the full picture. And then we can find out, how we want to reach it, how we want it to look, how we want to build it together. That's one of the things that I see as part of my path and my journey to try and help us find that together. Next slide. In some of our work here, you're going to see points on decolonization within, reaching home, indigenization within data collection. And you'll see pieces of this map spread all throughout the work that we do. And this is because of the each and every single individual members of RDN that makes up teams. People that go on those journeys of reconciliation, discovering truth, discovering how they feel about it, going on that journey, and building it within their projects, building it within themselves. That's what I believe when I think of reconciliation. It's not just a check that we mark off. Have we done a land acknowledgement? It's how do we make it real? How do we make it a part of us? Willalin, Miigwech, thank you.
Thanks, Emil. My name is Tricia Hampton. I'm the Rural Revitalization Coordinator here at RDN, and I'm going to talk about rural revitalization. So first off, what is rural revitalization? Well, the initiative works with rural communities and stakeholders to create a strategy that looks at planning from a holistic approach, not in silos, and just like the three-legged stool that Deanne referenced earlier. So in order then to do that planning, we want that action to look at all aspects of rural living, everything from housing, community safety, economic development, and rural immigration, as these rural issues all affect each other. So why is rural revitalization important? Rural issues are interconnected. Deanne mentioned that as well. So when we look at things like housing and workforce, you can't have one without the other. But often resources and capacity are limited in small rural communities. So by looking at all these issues at once, planning efficiency is improved for municipalities. So now they can set priorities based on all areas that need to be addressed in their region. And now that planning can be turned into actionable steps in order to achieve tangible outcomes. So I thought I would just have a couple questions here. So often we find there's misconceptions with rural living. And so I wanted to ask two questions of the audience and just see how people responded. So for those of you in the room, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. And for those of you on Zoom, we have a poll that you can answer. So first question, true or false? Affordable housing developments reduce crime and increase housing evaluations. So if you believe that's true, raise your hand, please. Okay, pretty good. I'd say we got a good over half. All right, second question. In 2022, immigration accounted for 50% of population growth in Canada and 75% of Canada's labor force growth. So those of you in the room, if you think it's true, raise your hand. All right, I think we got about a third. And have we got time for the people on Zoom to do the poll? Okay, perfect. So thanks everybody for participating. So now let's see the answers. So on question number 1, it's actually true. So there was a study in Orange County and it demonstrated that affordable housing development actually created a decrease in violent crime, so robbery and assault, and a 16,000 average increase in housing evaluation per home. So this belief that affordable housing is detrimental to a community is false. It brings stability and security to a region, and it's a large part of a community health and safety plan. Affordable housing creates economic investment in your community and also creates taxpayers that allow you to have a consistent municipal revenue stream, so then municipalities can do their long-term planning. So affordable housing benefits everybody in the community. So the second question is actually false. So in 2022, immigration accounted for 75%, not 50, of population growth in Canada and 100%, not 75%, of Canada's labor force growth. Immigration is playing a large role in our communities and in workforce development. In order to meet the needs of newcomers in our community and in our workforce, we need to inform community members and employers how to welcome them and give them the supports that they need to flourish. So lastly, I just wanted to talk about some upcoming projects that we'll have this fall. We're going to continue to work with councils and community stakeholders to understand the economic impacts and investments realized by addressing social issues, such as housing, while ultimately creating taxpayers and those consistent revenue streams that are important for municipalities. We're also developing a webinar that'll look at the misconceptions or the myths associated with rural living, everything from housing to workforce development, to really create discussion around how we can address these misconceptions and how RDN can assist. And lastly, we're working on a program to offer free 30-minute consultations with community stakeholders to identify key concerns in their community and identify next courses of action to revitalize their rural community in a holistic manner. So keeping that three-legged stool in mind to create a thriving rural community. So now I'll pass it over to Sydney, who's going to discuss reaching home.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Senekis, and I am the Director of Homelessness Initiatives with RDN. And while RDN continues to administer the federal government's Reaching Home funding to rural, remote, and Indigenous communities in Alberta, this initiative has also grown to support communities across the country in responding to homelessness through our Coordinated Access Project and data collection, specifically our Housing and Service Needs Program. I'd first like to just start off by thanking each of our homelessness teams and their members who have worked tremendously hard this past year to expand our initiatives and projects and provide meaningful support to communities. As some of you may know, RDN is the Alberta Rural and Remote Community Entity for the Reaching Home program, which is the federal government's homelessness strategy aimed at reducing and preventing homelessness across Canada. We received $2.2 million in Reaching Home funding in 2022, which included $1.2 million in incremental funding that was invested into the program by the federal government to sustain the additional funding that was invested during the pandemic, with the aim of distributing funding across as many communities as possible. 53 projects in a total of 40 different communities were supported through Reaching Home this past year. Now, I would like to take some time to talk about our team's most important achievement this past year, which you heard a little bit about from Emil earlier. In the spirit of reconciliation and recognizing that homelessness affects the Indigenous peoples at disproportionate rates, the Reaching Home team, with the guidance and leadership of Emil, made a commitment to reduce barriers and increase accessibility for Indigenous communities to apply for and access Reaching Home funding. This involved making changes to our call for proposals application process, which included creating a letter of intent and facilitating an oral application. In addition, we offered more flexible and culturally appropriate reporting methods for Indigenous nations and organizations. We're happy to share that our Regional Advisory Board, who oversees funding decisions, distributed approximately 46% of Reaching Home funding from this past year to Indigenous nations and organizations. The team is grateful for Emil's support throughout this past year, and we really want to thank our Indigenous partners who generously shared feedback with us as we continue to work to decolonize our approach to administering funding. We acknowledge there is still so much more work to be done, but we are excited to have taken these first important steps to really rethink the way that we're administering funding. So in terms of our project outcomes this past year, Reaching Home funding has directly supported thousands of overnight stays in emergency shelters and MAP programs across rural and remote and Indigenous communities in Alberta. 265 people across a number of projects were successfully placed into housing. 226 people across a number of projects received assistance to maintain their housing. So this included landlord and tenant mediation, family mediation, and short-term financial assistance with rental arrears and utility arrears. 434 people were supported successfully in obtaining income assistance, employment, education, job training, and community and social programming. In terms of capital projects, 4 communities developed transitional, permanent, supportive, and emergency housing, and as a result, 49 new beds were created. In the past year, funding contributed to the development of various innovative responses to homelessness, including the establishment of Drayton Valley's Shelter Pods program, which is a new and innovative way of providing emergency shelter to folks experiencing homelessness. We also want to highlight Changing Horses, Indigenous-led supportive housing complex on Kainai Nation, which will be opening its doors shortly. The complex will consist of 4 duplexes, which will house the community members experiencing homelessness, and will also provide a central hub building that will offer various wraparound support services, not only for Blood Tribe members living in the supportive housing, but other members who are experiencing homelessness and the larger community as a whole. And you can see the lead innovator of Changing Horses, Katie Rabbit Young Pine, pictured here on the left. We're just so grateful to have the opportunity to work with Katie and the team at Changing Horses to continue learning about how we can better decolonize Reaching Home funding and move towards more culturally appropriate reporting processes. Now, of course, we wish there was time to celebrate the achievements of all of our 53 projects today. As of this year, RDN has spent the past 10 years supporting rural, remote, and Indigenous communities in Alberta in responding to homelessness through hundreds of projects thanks to the federal government's homelessness program. And our team would like to take a moment today to thank Deanne Bernard, our CEO, for championing this funding since the early days at RDN. Which has and continues to have a tremendous impact on service providers and rural residents who are experiencing and at risk of homelessness. We look forward to continuing to work with our projects this next year. As our current projects wrap up activities this coming March, we are anticipating but waiting for official Reaching Home funding confirmation beyond 2024. So stay tuned, and we hope to continue supporting communities responding to homelessness and housing insecurity in the future. Sorry, I'm not done yet. So this past year, funding contributed to the development, oh, and that is the wrong, sorry, I'm on autopilot. So in the last year, the National Coordinated Access Project Our team has been researching and engaging with communities, service providers, and those with lived and/or living experience of homelessness on how urban-focused coordinated access systems can be adapted to rural, remote, and Indigenous communities to meet their unique needs and challenges. So this project's goal is to create a guide for rural, remote, and Indigenous communities to develop and implement coordinated access that is both adaptable and scalable across communities. For those of you who may not know what coordinated access is, it essentially is a system that provides streamlined services for individuals or families who are at risk or experiencing homelessness. And these systems ultimately aim to reduce barriers to folks in accessing services through coordinated service delivery. So in the past year, we have visited 3 communities in person, 1 in Alberta and 2 in Ontario, and we've hosted 10 virtual focus group sessions. We've engaged with a total of 105 service providers and 80 persons with lived and/or living experience of homelessness. So what we've heard when we engaged with people with lived and/or living experience of homelessness was that when you're homeless, your stuff often gets stolen. You might have missing identification. Money is better to be in cash, and even a $5 Tim Hortons gift card can go a long way and make your day. Folks also noted that there are feelings of shame and being judged because of the public perception of homelessness. Folks also mentioned that there's often no public services available at night to access food or washroom facilities. And finally, jobs are often a lot easier to maintain when they have access to appropriate shelter and housing. Now, what we've learned from service providers was that all agencies, of course, need more funding to carry out effective service delivery. In addition, as I'm sure no surprise to a lot of you in the room here, there's been an increasing amount of staff burnout across the sector. And service providers often know they're not able to do those big picture things in addition to their frontline work. So we've heard loud and clear from service providers and individuals with lived and/or living experience of homelessness that coordinated access is needed everywhere, but it must be flexible, not prescriptive. So we're now in the process of writing the toolkit and trainings to share with service providers across Canada. The toolkit will focus on interagency collaboration, regionalized approach to service delivery that prevents forced migration, so people having to leave their home communities to go to urban centers to access services, the development of training materials, and data sharing. In the new year, the toolkit and trainings will be piloted in a minimum of 5 communities in Alberta. So if you're interested in being one of the pilot communities, we definitely encourage you to connect with us and reach out, and then we can figure out a way that we can work together. Thank you. And I would now like to pass things off to my colleague, Emma Wallace.
Thanks, everyone. So my name is Emma Wallace, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our housing and service needs estimations program here at RDN. So before I kind of dive into things, I just want to tell you a little bit about the program. So RDN works collaboratively with rural, remote, and Indigenous communities across Canada to provide a comprehensive picture of homelessness in your community, to develop recommendations and kind of next steps for service providers, communities, and all levels of government as they work to address housing insecurity in their area. And then probably most importantly, we're really working to elevate and incorporate the voices of folks experiencing homelessness in the solutions to end homelessness. So I want to spend a few minutes just telling you about some of our key activities over the last year. So the first thing that we kind of conducted or undertook over the past year is maybe one of the most exciting things in my mind, which is probably a little bit silly for everyone else, but we did an audit, a review, and we updated the step-by-step guide to estimating rural, remote, and Indigenous homelessness. So it was last updated in 2019. A lot has happened since then, the emergence of COVID-19, kind of an ever-changing landscape of housing insecurity across the country. We're in a bit of a cost of living and a housing crisis right now, and so lots has changed. And so we kind of wanted to connect with community leaders, service providers, folks experiencing homelessness, and academics across the country to see, what's still working in the guide and maybe what needs to be updated based on our kind of current context. So based on kind of our communication with everyone, the audit resulted in updates to the guide and the survey tool that really focused on better reflecting current understandings of homelessness. So we updated what the definitions of homelessness look like according to national definitions. And then also the context in which communities are operating on. And then we also reflected on kind of best practices around administering surveys and also adhering to ethical considerations. So armed with kind of this updated guide to estimating rural, remote, and Indigenous homelessness, we launched the third iteration of the Alberta Provincial Housing and Service Needs Estimation Project, which is a hilarious mouthful, but a really exciting project. So after putting out a call for interest, we partnered with 22 organizations that represent roughly 45 communities across the province, so a really regionalized approach to addressing homelessness here this year. We were really focusing on collecting the housing and service needs data. And we conducted our 30-day enumeration in March of 2023. And then on top of that provincial estimation project, we were also contracted by 6 rural, remote, and Indigenous communities across Alberta and BC to conduct customized housing and service needs estimations in their communities. And so what I want to do is just share kind of an interesting data theme that came out of these projects. So data collected across all 6 projects really focused or showed us the amount of people who are housing insecure, who are self-identifying as housing secure. So this means people who are saying that I'm in a stable or a secure housing situation. But when we do our analysis and we compare that to national definitions of homelessness, these folks are actually experiencing housing insecurity or homelessness. And this is a really important finding because people who identify as secure are much less likely to access services that would support their situation moving forward. So this is something we're working with communities on moving forward to kind of better understand what homelessness looks like. In all of the communities that we were working with, their kind of goal in conducting the estimation was really around using the data collected and the reports that we provided as evidence to influence change in their housing sectors. And so that was really their main goal in doing this work. Yeah, so that's kind of some of our key activities that we've done over the last little while. Now I'll pass it over to Taylor, who's going to tell us about our First Nations data collection project.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Sparkling Eyes. I'm the project manager for the First Nations data collection project. And to keep the data train rolling, we're going to talk a little bit about how this project came to be. It actually came out of Emma's work through her long project name. I cannot remember all the words. So a little bit about that. RDN really realized that, there needs to be a focus on what First Nation homelessness looks like. And so that's how this project came to be. So we really are focusing on co-creating a culturally appropriate and inclusive data collection tool that measures what on-reserve homelessness looks like. As we know, there is unique conditions faced by First Nations across the country. Therefore, this tool is really to understand the uniquenesses of each community, as we've partnered with 5 communities across the country. So we really have collected quite an array of voices and perspectives into the co-creation of our tool. Next slide. So in the past year, me and my team have looked at the current scope of what methodologies and data is currently being collected for First Nation specific housing situations. And as you know, the information represented by First Nation and Indigenous people is often aggregated at a provincial and federal level, not being able to be understood further, marginalizing First Nations and not providing them with the autonomy to control the data that is represented of Indigenous people. And our second finding was really that there is no First Nation definition of homelessness. We have Jesse Thistle's amazing definition, but as always, as most things when it comes to Indigenous research, is under an umbrella term, the term Indigenous. Therefore, First Nations people have different concepts of home and their relations to the land in their communities. So I'm hoping that this project can help us further understand what First Nations homelessness looks like. And thirdly, there is an inadequate or non-existent data for Indigenous people across the country. Oftentimes, the census or Stats Can data isn't able to be broken down by these specific Indigenous groups, therefore further marginalizing them again. And the data that is out there is never culturally appropriate when it comes to Indigenous people. So there are so many different barriers that First Nations communities have to overcome when they're looking at the current data that is available out there. Next slide. And so, kind of bringing you to that, I want us to all think about what Indigenous data sovereignty is. And if you're not aware of what it is, here's an awesome quote from the University of Toronto, letting us know that, in order to do this work in a good way, we really have to incorporate ethical principles of OCAP that allow for First Nations communities to access, control, own, and possess their own data when you're doing this work. Next slide. And so by RDN undertaking this project, we're really hoping that it will have a positive impact for First Nations communities across the country. And by that, there is really a lack of for Indigenous by Indigenous initiatives. And I'm happy to say that our First Nations data collection team is composed of 3 self-identifying Indigenous women, which is very rare to see when it comes to research. So very happy for me and my team. The second is the ethical principles behind the work we're doing. Me and my team really wanted to understand what Indigenous data sovereignty meant and how to embed the principles of OCAP in the work we're doing. So we really took a deep dive on understanding that there is no right way to do this. It's a learning journey, and it's been a long journey across the work we've been doing, but it's been super interesting to learn that more work in this field needs to be done, and I'm happy to say that we're leading kind of this pathway for Indigenous data collection. And the last 2 are really in line with RDN's commitments to the work they do for rural and Indigenous communities, which is that capacity building. Is it echoey? I feel really echoey. And that storytelling piece, which really allows to amplify Indigenous voices, which have always been silenced. So I'm really happy to say that this project is allowing for Indigenous people to once again have their voices heard and shared. And on that note, my call to action to everyone listening or joining into the AGM today is think about how you can help promote Indigenous data sovereignty through the work you're doing and what that looks like in your personal and professional lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. So, hey everybody, my name is Sean, and I'm a planning specialist within RDN's Sustainable Housing Initiative, which was established in 2015 to create a model to develop sustainable, affordable housing in rural communities. Now, in SHI, we're also responding to the national housing crisis by creating and redefining how communities, all levels of government, and people in general think about the housing spectrum. Furthermore, we're supporting communities in their effort to build affordable housing that will be sustainable and realistic for future growth. Now, one way we do this is by helping communities access funding and navigate the funding process to help build sustainable, affordable housing. Another way in which we support rural communities is through conducting housing needs and demand assessments, where between April 2022 and March 2023, the SHI team completed over 6 housing needs assessments for rural communities in Alberta. But what is a housing needs and demands assessment? Well, in short, it's a tool used to assess the current and future needs of housing in a community and consists of 3 main parts, which is demand, housing supply, and a housing gaps analysis. Now, the importance of an assessment like this is multifaceted because it gives an overview of various important metrics and helps housing developers identify or confirm housing needs in their community and can serve as evidence that that need exists in the community. Furthermore, it will also help you determine if your perceptions of the community's housing needs are correct or if the needs are different than what you anticipated. Now, some of the benefits of conducting a housing needs assessment is that it really helps support informed decision-making that can target areas of need for housing in a community. Furthermore, this data that you can gather is critical to confirming any sort of anecdotal evidence gathered from community members and really helps refine those conclusions on what type of housing ought to be prioritized to address that community's needs. Now, another benefit, of course, is that funding bodies and governments will also want to see this sort of research and data to back the need for affordable housing. Now, some funding streams that would require this assessment include CMHC's co-investment funding, their Rapid Housing Initiative, and CMHC's Housing Accelerator Fund, as well as FCM's Green Municipal Fund. Now, within SHI, we're also really excited to be continuing our work with the Enabling Housing Choice Project, which is a 3-year research and policy project that's been funded by the Alberta Real Estate Foundation. And it really aims to provide insight on how Albertan municipalities can support growth in their communities, while also helping to provide more housing choice and diversity to their residents through local policy changes and capacity building strategies. And throughout the second phase of the project, and in our last year, we partnered with 6 communities, and this included the town of Bow Island, the town of Pincher Creek, Trochu, Claresholm, Mayerthorpe, and the city of Airdrie. Now, our objective, of course, has been to examine local expectations and attitudes towards diverse housing development in the community, and then provide recommendations that would help assist them in improving housing choice and diversity by addressing any policy, bylaw, or process barriers that they might face. And while we've now wrapped up our projects with Bow Island and Airdrie in the last year, we're looking forward to now completing our work with the 4 remaining municipalities, after which point we'll start working on developing a guidebook that will help enable housing choice across Alberta. Furthermore, we're also really excited to announce that we've updated the step-by-step guide to developing affordable housing. And this was made possible by the National Advisory Committee and funding support from FCM and CMHC. Now, this slide here highlights some of the key gaps that we identified in our original guide, such as the construction process or details around navigating the funding process, operations and maintenance, as well as improvements on energy efficiency in affordable housing. And furthermore, we've developed the Affordable Housing Development course that will be available online through a learning management system platform that's similar to those you might find in universities and colleges. So here in this course, learners will be placed in quarterly cohorts, and these cohorts will be based on people serving similar target markets. Furthermore, the platform will enable various people within each cohort to interact and share ideas through the discussion forum on our platform. And this course will ensure that the groups understand the affordable housing development process and will enable funding agencies to focus on successfully helping groups access funding. And yeah, that's pretty much the wrap on that, but let's take a quick look at the platform right now in the next video.
What is the Sustainable Housing Initiative, or the SHI? Well, the SHI is an arm of the Rural Development Network. We work to build capacity in Canada's affordable housing sector. Our team is composed of experts from rural, remote, and urban Canada. The intent of this course is to equip participants with the ability to independently navigate affordable housing projects through pre-development. So what makes housing affordable? Well, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, commonly referred to as the CMHC, suggests that households who spend more than 30% of their gross income on shelter live in unaffordable housing. This means that affordable housing is when a household spends less than 30% of their gross income on housing. As there are many forms of affordable housing, this course has chosen to focus on what we know best, rental affordable housing, meaning that a household's rent must be below 30% of their gross income. To give you an idea, the 2021 census determined that 1/3 of renters live in unaffordable housing. 1/3 of renters in Canada are paying over 30% of their gross income on housing costs. So now we'll talk about the housing continuum. The housing continuum is the spectrum of housing that ranges from the provision of emergency housing all the way up to market home ownership. Each step of the continuum services a particular need. This course will primarily focus on affordable housing, while touching on community, supportive, transitional, and emergency shelter housing. From 2011 to 2021, Canada saw a growth rate of 21.5% in renter households. While renting becomes more popular, it's also become more expensive. That's why the SHI believes that the creation and preservation of affordable housing is essential to our work in addressing and finding solutions to Canada's housing crisis.
And that was the voice of Kabir from SHI. So thank you, Kabir. Lastly, we're really excited to continue work with the Placemaking for Inclusion project, which has been funded by the Community Housing Transformation Center. And that's basically a one-year research project that really seeks to understand the stigmatization of affordable housing while also engaging with tenants to help arrive at tenant-informed ideas and solutions to help overcome these stigmas and promote inclusion in their communities through social events and public placemaking. And we've been really excited to partner with an Edmonton Seniors Residence, La Société des Manoirs, where we obtained further funding from the federal New Horizons for Seniors grant to host a community mural painting event where senior tenants at the affordable residence were able to paint mural tiles with other community members and children from the neighboring school. Now, the mural that you see on this slide here is actually the culmination of the tenant and community members' creative work, which was then assembled and completed by a local Edmonton area artist named Louis Lavoie. And we're very excited to actually be hosting an unveiling of this mural probably in the next few weeks. Afterwards, we will continue to produce a final toolkit that affordable housing providers and tenants to help enable them to undertake similar social events or placemaking projects of their own. But I'm now happy to introduce you to Mary. I don't know if Mary's here. Doing it? Okay, perfect. Oh,
My name is Mary McGuire, and I'm a project manager with Rural Development Network. I wanted to provide an update on how the Shelter Pulse project has gone this year. The Shelter Pulse project is funded by Women and Gender Equality Canada through RDN's partnership with Mountain Rose Women's Shelter, and by collaborating with various rural violence against women shelters across Canada. We are working toward creating an online database of research-based trauma-informed policies and practices for violence against women's shelters across the country. So this year involves a review of existing policies and procedures and research into identifying gaps within those policies and procedures in the violence against women shelter sector. So we also have been working on further development of the Shelter Pulse database and the development of approximately 70 policies and procedures for rural shelter partners to eventually review and provide feedback on. So right now, that's the phase we're in. We're actually in between phases, between 3 and 4, and we will be starting to engage shelter partners next week, actually. So very exciting. This year, we also had the opportunity to present at the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters Leading Change Conference, where we were able to share information about the Shelter Pulse project and also provide a live demo of the database. So I'm just going to show you quickly the database here, the back end. It's a screenshot. Essentially, I've been referring to it as almost like online shopping space if you're looking for policies and procedures related to violence against women's shelters. So as you can see, there is a list of policies and procedures already on the database, and you're able to either download them individually right away. They go right into a Word document, which is ideal because then the shelters can edit it and make it make sense for their own space and their own communities. There's also the option of adding it to a folder on the same on the database system. So everybody has their own login. They're able to add multiple policies and procedures to their folder and then download it all at once. So it's almost like you're downloading an entire policy and procedure booklet. Another thing I wanted to discuss quickly before we move on is we've also been working with Tahiti Women's Society in Uluhuk, Northwest Territories. We're supporting their capacity to structure and model an Inuit-centered shelter for Inuit women and to us LGBTQ+ folks living in the community. And a part of that work is supporting them in the development of those anyone-centered policies and procedures, which they will be sharing with Shelter Pulse to include in this database as well. So moving right along, I've also, over the past couple of years, been managing the Awareness Builds Connection in Dementia-Friendly Communities project. And this project is funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada. And the ABCD project had provided 5 rural Albertan communities with a menu of evidence-based dementia inclusive initiatives adaptable to rural settings. This project wrapped up in March 2023, and we engaged Drumheller, Sturgeon County, Strathmore, Wheatland County, Spirit River, and Tabor on this project. And a key part of it was to work with those selected pilot communities to develop, implement, and evaluate those community initiatives, really supporting them in creating a bit of a baseline of an initiative with seed funding, and then providing additional support to hopefully keep them going after the funding ends. So from the experiences of implementing those initiatives, we worked closely with those community leads on these initiatives to develop 5 step-by-step guides, which in turn we've been sharing with other rural communities looking to implement similar things. So collectively, those 5 rural communities implemented memory cafes, dementia awareness training sessions. They created dementia inclusive spaces in libraries and in their support services spaces. And also we're hosting dementia awareness speaker series. So in place of a mobile exhibit, where we would be physically going to about 10 communities to share the project findings and share the highlights and challenges with other rural communities, we decided to instead move to a virtual platform to highlight those stories. So we worked with Two Canoes Media and alongside the community leads in each community to create a mini documentary where participants in these initiatives and the folks who were leading these initiatives were able to tell the story of what took place in the implementation. And I wanted to share just a short, I think 2 or 3 minute clip of that video or documentary just to show you what it looks like and give you a bit of a highlight of what it looked like in practice. I'll just move on to that slide.
The ABCD project is Awareness Builds Connection in Dementia-Friendly Communities. And the idea of this project is to work with rural communities in Alberta to support them in becoming more dementia inclusive. We chose 5 rural communities. That would be Sturgeon County, Strathmore, Spirit River, Tabor, and Drumheller. Strathmore, they did a speaker series, different speakers that could talk about their experiences with dementia. They also did a train the trainer with first responders, dementia awareness session with firefighters and I believe EMS to teach them sort of how to better understand and work with those who are living with dementia. Tabor, Alberta and Drumheller, they're doing a memory cafe where it's more mobile, very engaged with various community vendors and community event spaces.
I would think the relationship with the people that are running the program is just much beyond what I thought it would be, and I guess I can't stress the kindness
My husband has a memory problem, and he still says, "Isn't it time for us to go to the memory cafe?"
Sturgeon County, they put together these brain kits, and these brain kits are an interactive experience for older adults living with dementia to exercise their brain and to use their brain in different ways. So in Spirit River, they brought in a program called the Java Memory Music Program. It's very much based in art and in music.
The aspect that really we liked was the resident-to-resident connection. It's them being there for each other.
I like it because I feel home there.
Hi everyone, my name is Sohail Homayed and I'm the Program Manager for the Rural Immigration Initiative. Over the past year, the Rural Immigration Initiative has expanded our work to support employers in rural communities in creating more inclusive workplaces to better support economic growth and immigrant retention in our communities. One project that had a significant impact on increasing capacity for employers was the Employer Practices Project titled Being Proactive in Rural Canada, creating mechanisms for inclusive workplaces that support employers and employees. This is a multi-year project funded by the WES Miriam Asefa Fund and is done in partnership with the Center for Civic and Religious Literacy, Religious Freedom and Business Foundations, the Timiskaming Shores Chamber of Commerce, Keepers of the Circle, and the City of Timiskaming Shores. This past year, we piloted the Interbelief Employee Resource Groups, or what we call IERGs. These IERG meetings were held monthly as an opportunity to support a more inclusive work environment by welcoming and valuing all aspects of identity. In addition to the IERG meetings, the project team started a 3-month program called Working Together, Engaging Faith and Belief at Work certification training for participating employers who had completed the program. Next slide. So another project that supported rural employers is what we call READY, the Rural Employers Awareness on Diversity and Inclusion Project, and that's funded by the Government of Alberta's Settlement, Integration and Language Program. This is an 18-month project done in partnership with 2 immigrant serving agencies, Lethbridge Family Services and Assist Community Services Centre, and it worked with over 23 employers across North, Central, and Southern Alberta to support workforces with the successful attraction, settlement, and retention of newcomer employees in the workplace. We held virtual training and engagement sessions for employers from over 12 different industries and held in-person collaborative workshops where we invited employers, newcomers with lived experience, settlement agencies, and municipalities to come together to talk about the successful attraction and retention of newcomers in our small towns. This project is actually just wrapping up now this month, and once complete, we'll be publishing a toolkit for employers across the country to be able to access resources and information on how to support newcomer employees. The Immigration Initiative also continued our work with service providers and immigrant communities to help build rural capacity. We had the opportunity to lead a Ukrainian settlement support project where we ran a 4-part training series to support communities in better understanding the needs of Ukrainian evacuees coming to our small towns. This project was funded by the Alberta Association of Immigrant Serving Agencies, and we partnered with the Multicultural Health Brokers and Action for Healthy Communities. The project supported over 23 communities in Alberta, in addition to other provinces such as Manitoba, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and Nova Scotia. This year, our team also published a toolkit called Strengthening Community Capacity to Support Newcomers, and that was developed to provide resources and information for service providers and municipalities on how they can understand and meet the needs of newcomers coming to our small towns. Finally, our team had the opportunity to support newcomer entrepreneurship through the In Our Hands program. In Our Hands is a cooperative entrepreneurship program that aims to provide resources and training to increase the accessibility of the cooperative model for immigrants. This is another project funded by the WES Fund and is done in partnership with the BC Co-op Association and the Women's Economic Council. This past year, over 22 individuals completed the Co-op's 101 introductory course, and so far the project has supported 3 successful cooperatives. One example in particular is called Culture Links, and they specialize in translation services, interpretation services, intercultural events, and multilingual professional services. And they were actually incorporated in March of this year. So we have a lot of really great opportunities coming up for our initiative next year. We will be launching, like I said, the completion of the Ready Toolkit, which will be available for download for employers across the country. We will also be offering several different customized training opportunities for employers, service providers, and municipalities in specialized topics like equity, diversity, and inclusion, anti-discrimination training, and supporting cross-cultural awareness in the community. Our team will also be working closely with other initiatives to address more holistic community issues in regards to immigration and community development. And finally, we'll be working with rural and remote communities to further support newcomer immigration programs and initiatives. I will now pass things over to my colleague, Daniela.
Thanks, Ohela. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniela Seiferling, and I guess not speaking into the mic. Well, there we go. My name is Daniela Seiferling, and I am the program manager for Work Integrated Learning. So WIL is something that allows students to gain much needed experience before they graduate. Through meaningful engagement, we help students transition to their future careers and support employers with building capacity through short-term projects that have tangible results. We see WIL placements as an innovative way to support employers with recruitment, retention, support their economic development at the local level, and support resilient workplaces and communities. During this fiscal year, we matched over 900 students with employers across Canada, bringing our totals to more than 1,700 students matched between October 1st, 2021 and August 31st, 2023. A priority of our program is creating meaningful placements that prepare students for the workforce and build capacity for rural businesses. So of the students and employers surveyed during our program year, 100% of employers indicated the placement built capacity, strengthened skill sets that they were missing on their team, and supported their overall business goals. And 88% of our students felt more confident in their ability to find a job after they graduated. And 95% of students developed or enhanced their skill sets in the following areas: things like leadership, teamwork, problem solving, and critical thinking. And another stat that we're very proud of is 95% of our employers hired more than one student or engaged students over multiple semesters, indicating the program is a great way to boost your short-term capacity or enhance your team's existing skill sets in areas that you might not have available. So some of the things that we're really proud of that we achieved over the last year is we grew our program from 4 PSI partners to more than 20, expanding the breadth of our network and creating more opportunities for employers and students across Canada. We launched a matching platform to better enable employers to post opportunities and match with students and post-secondary institutions. We developed a WIL microsite to reduce barriers to engagement for employers and students, kind of creating a single point of entry for WIL and associated resources. And we launched a storytelling campaign to raise awareness of WIL and its benefits for students, employers, and post-secondary institutions, which reached over 100,000 people through our social media posts this year alone. So now I'd like to share a little bit of a video that was produced and animated and edited by a former RDN intern, Kendall Borg, to highlight the concept of WIL. Since completing her internship, Kendall has gone on to pursue a diploma with the Vancouver Film School.
To provide an overview of work integrated learning, some practical examples of how you can create a project to engage students in your organization. What exactly is work integrated learning, or WIL? It's a placement that combines practical experience with academic knowledge. Most people are familiar with things like co-ops, apprenticeships, and internships. Still, there are many different types of WIL, including community and industry research projects, apprenticeships, co-ops, entrepreneurship, field placements, internships, practicums, community service learning, and work experience. A company that designs mobile phone apps has engaged a group of students for a weekend hackathon. By tapping into multiple skill levels in the areas of coding and design, they can quickly develop an interactive map showcasing the various events, festivals, and local venues to help you make the most of the summer season. Medium-sized business has been struggling with increases in employee turnover. To help with long-term retention strategies, they hired a business student to work on an applied research project. The student analyzed data from employee interviews and workplace satisfaction surveys to assess levels of engagement. The recommendations helped inform new and improved wellness and employee benefit policies. A biological sciences student takes soil samples as part of their field placement. They're studying the long-term effects of climate change and how droughts and flooding impact a local municipality's crops and overall soil health to help strengthen local climate change action. Finally, we have a group of marketing and communication students working on a course-based internship project. They're supporting a local nonprofit with their volunteer recruiting efforts. They're creating an advertising campaign, including social media content and graphics, to recruit new volunteers to help with an upcoming fundraiser. Engaging students is about creating a mutually beneficial project that supports shared learning outcomes and provides value for your business or organization. Learn more about the Rural Development Network's Work Integrated Learning Program at www.ruraldevelopment.ca/initiatives.
And now I'll pass things over to Lisa to talk about what's next for RDN.
Hi, my name is Lisa Belanger. I'm the Director of Operations with the RDN. I'm the last presenter for today for our staff presentations. I know there's been a lot of information shared. As you can tell from the presentations, RDN certainly has a vested interest in the success and thriving of rural, remote, and Indigenous communities across Canada, and continues to evolve its programs to respond to their needs. You can find more details about all of the past year's projects in our annual report. There's some around the room here, and we'll drop the link in the Zoom chat as well. And there's also many opportunities to get involved, whether it be in some of our current projects, events that we host, or in working together to identify how RDN can support your organization or community. So as we move forward, we have some exciting things coming up for the next year. We are continuing to work hard to tie our work together to take a holistic approach to community development, as we've mentioned, that encompasses multiple aspects of a community's needs rather than working in silos. All of the great work that you've heard about today is, of course, continuing. And in addition, we were fortunate to receive a grant recently from the Community Services Recovery Fund to support us in implementing important aspects of our growth plan as well, which includes hosting engagement sessions to gather feedback and to help us inform our work, engaging with elders and knowledge keepers as well to guide our work, implementing our communication strategy, doing more training with our staff related to Indigenous cultural awareness and equity, diversity, and inclusion, evaluating our programs more thoroughly and consistently to help us measure where our capacity has the most impact, and being able to communicate that as well. We're working to diversify our funding sources to be more financially resilient, and we're adapting our programs to be able to deliver in a hybrid model so that we can better serve communities across Canada, including the technology that we're using today to host this hybrid AGM, which, by the way, if you're interested in for your upcoming AGM or event, do reach out to us. So I just want to thank all of our staff for their amazing work that you've heard about today, their dedication and their passion for what we do. I also want to thank some team members that we didn't hear directly from today, of course, for their work on these projects, but as well in other areas of the organization that are crucial to making them happen. And that includes our communications and marketing team, operations and finance team, and of course, our board and advisory board for their support and guidance. So thank you all. We have a few minutes if there are any questions before I introduce our guest speaker for today. Is there any questions in the Zoom? And we'll have some time to chat after as well. So So we'll move right along, and we have a really special guest with us here today, whom the RDN has been working with for quite some time. Jessica DeVries is the housing policy strategist for the city of Airdrie, and prior to her current role, she worked at the city of Calgary in their affordable housing policy team for 5 years. Before her work in housing, Jessica's career and education were centered in international aid, where she worked at the federal level for the U.S. Agency for International Development and the U.S. Peace Corps, with fieldwork assignments in Iraq, Haiti, and Morocco. She also held roles in international business and education. And Jessica is a graduate of Rutgers University, where she completed a Master's of Public Administration. She also holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in International Relations from the University of San Diego. She grew up in both Montreal and Dallas, and now shares a home with her partner Ben and their 3 children in Calgary. Please join me in welcoming Jessica.
Hello, and thank you, Lisa, for that introduction. I'll start with a land acknowledgement for Airdrie, Alberta, which is the community I'm here to talk about today. Airdrie is on the traditional territories of Treaty 7, which is home to the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, the Pekainai, the Kainai, and the Tsuut'ina, as well as the Stoney Nakoda Nations and the Goodstoney, and the Chiniki, and the Bearspaw, and the people of Métis Nation Region 3. We honor and thank all First Peoples who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. So, next slide. The theme of the AGM is empowering rural and Indigenous communities, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about this important topic through the lens of affordable housing, which is a human right. My presentation today will cover the journey that the City of Airdrie has had in expanding the city's affordable housing program, and I'll talk about the pathway to success that we've had over the past year, which is largely connected with the work that we've accomplished with RDN. And I'll also share with you some learnings that I think could be applicable to other municipalities as well as other organizations. Next. But first, I want to start out with a few contextual facts about Airdrie. Airdrie is located just north of Calgary, and many of our residents access services and work in Calgary. So when we talk about Airdrie, we must talk about growth. In 1973, Airdrie's population was just over 1,000 people. And a decade later, 1983, the population had grown to 10,000 people. In 1995, Airdrie hit a major milestone and put in the first set of traffic lights. So when I say that we're a city that feels like a small town, we really do mean it. Our growth has been so significant in the past 20 years that many of our own residents don't even believe that the population is now over 80,000 people. Since the early 2000s, Airdrie's population has more than tripled. We've experienced one of the highest growth rates in the country, and now Airdrie is on track to being the 3rd largest city in Alberta, with over 100,000 people anticipated by 2030. With this growth, Airdrie has become a much more diverse community, and there have been many other positive changes. However, the breakneck population growth rate that is being fueled by in-migration also comes with challenges. The community infrastructure and municipal services struggle to keep up. Like the rest of the country, the affordable housing situation in Airdrie is inadequate to meeting the need. We estimate that at least 2,000 households are in need of affordable housing in Airdrie, and that's according to our last housing needs assessment that was done 6 years ago. This need is stacked up against the current supply of just over 100 below market affordable homes. Additionally, again, as in many other parts of the country, the availability of lower priced market rental or any rentals at all are drastically shrinking in Airdrie. A few more relatable points. One of the biggest reasons that Airdrie is in this state is due to a historic lack of investment in social infrastructure and affordable housing. Also, Airdrie is experiencing the fallout from the lack of housing options that people can afford. We're seeing one of our biggest community and economic assets, the young people, leave the community. Also, seniors who are on fixed incomes and who have lived and worked in Airdrie their entire lives are also struggling to afford to stay. So, acknowledging these significant challenges, I'm happy to be able to stand here in front of you at the AGM today and tell you that the City of Airdrie has come a long way in moving towards housing solutions over the past year. And RDN was with us every step of the way. The first success I'll share is that Airdrie completed robust foundational research that we are using to inform our housing program. The research was done through the City of Airdrie's partnership with RDN in the Enabling Housing Choice Project, which is part of the RDN Sustainable Housing Initiative. After completing many local housing stakeholder interviews and a comparative review of affordable housing best practices, the result of the project was a set of recommendations for key actions that the city can do that will improve Airdrie's housing situation. And the recommendations that came out of this report directly informed another major success, which is Airdrie's new Affordable Housing Principled Action Plan that received unanimous support from our City Council earlier this summer. The next success that I'm going to highlight is truly aligned with what we know is needed in order to achieve meaningful affordable housing solutions. And that is when all levels of government are at the table. This year, Airdrie Housing Limited will be opening 38 new affordable homes serving vulnerable people in Airdrie with a project that was made possible with municipal, provincial, and federal funding support. RDN assisted us in submitting funding applications to both CMHC and the province for this project. And here's a picture of the site. As you can see, it's a hotel conversion project, so sustainability goals are also being met. And I still have another success to talk about, and this one is still in progress. With the help of the team from RDN, last month, Airdrie submitted our application to the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund, or HAF. HAF is a federal program that is designating $4 billion directly to local governments by ensuring policy-based initiatives to increase the housing supply and increasing it faster, while also supporting the development of affordable, inclusive, equitable, and climate resilient communities. So there's only been one announcement made from the HAF program thus far, and that was in London, Ontario, not in Airdrie, Alberta. So you may be asking, like, how are we counting this as a success, just putting an application in? And we're still waiting to see if our application will be accepted into the program. But the reason for that I'm calling it a success is because of the process that the city achieved in order to pull this application together. This was a very complex application to prepare, and it had to be done in a very condensed time frame over the summer. And Airdrie's application required a significant amount of consultation, research, and calculations coming from multiple city departments, as well as other housing stakeholders in order to get it right. The whole of government approach to housing solutions is new ground for Airdrie. However, with the technical guidance and coordination help from the RDN team, our city departments worked as one team to achieve a comprehensive application that outlined how the city will significantly and sustainably increase the housing supply while staying true to Airdrie's guiding principles and council's vision for a complete community. Now the municipality can build on and replicate this coordinated approach where everyone is pulling in the same direction for meaningful housing solutions. And that's not just a nice to have result of our learnings through the HAF application process. The need for appropriate and viable housing options for our residents is becoming more and more urgent with every single passing day. And this issue cannot comprehensively be addressed through one department. Now I'd like to talk about some of my takeaways on factors for success, which include a whole of organization support, having champions, and having dedicated capacity. And taken from my background in working at the federal level and also with provincially funded higher education, as well as in nonprofits, as well as in consulting work, I think that these factors for success are applicable to many different types of organizations. I've mentioned the value of taking a holistic approach in my remarks from earlier, but I'll add that gaining buy-in from multiple parts of the organization is really key to moving the needle towards the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And that's because you'll be spending more time making deals that everyone wants to see happen and less time working out how to deal with issues that could be counterproductive and may have come from within your own organization. So for example, in the municipal context, getting affordable housing built faster requires commitment from across the organization. I'm working with the transit team and the planning departments because we will need the zoning to allow multifamily projects to come into areas that are in proximity to services and schools while also being served by transit. So buy-in to affordable housing goals is needed on all sides. And a great pathway to achieving buy-in is through identifying key champions at the leadership level of your organization. On the slide, I have a picture of Airdrie's mayor, Mayor Peter Brown, who is a vocal advocate for affordable housing and who has been key in rallying support from the other members of council as well as other community leaders. So Mayor Brown isn't and doesn't need to be an expert on housing policy. Instead, he's focused on the bigger picture of the overall goal and the priorities that Airdrie is aiming to achieve. And that is that all residents have access to safe and affordable and appropriate housing. Because the intent behind the outcomes that we want are very clear, administration can enjoy a level of flexibility in figuring out the details on the recommended approach to gaining ground on those goals. And I'll just add that I think smaller organizations are at an advantage in identifying and developing your champions because the connection to leadership is much more direct versus being buried in multiple layers of the organization. The third success factor is dedicated capacity. And I know that this is much easier said than done for many small organizations. However, housing is a very complex issue, and sadly, the need doesn't look like it's going to be subsiding anytime soon. The sooner an organization can apply consistent stewardship towards finding solutions, the better and more robust that the response is going to be. And this is truly an issue where putting some investment in capacity has the potential to pay off in greater returns, including increasing the potential for leveraging resources from outside your organization. And this capacity could be in contracted services as well as in staff. For the city of Airdrie, we've applied resources in both. My position is the first and so far only position dedicated to affordable housing within the city's administration. And I just started last year. Airdrie has also invested in contracted services to help us with the key pieces of work. And as I've outlined, RDN has been involved in several of our biggest projects. So the message is that consultants are here to help us, and oftentimes they really know what they're doing. And the work can be leveraged much further when there's someone inside the organization to connect the work. Finally, I have a few learnings specific to housing that I wanted to share that I think have been really important in advancing Airdrie's housing agenda. First, amplifying the message that housing makes economic sense. And there are many reasons to do affordable housing. Housing is a human right. Appropriate housing leads to positive health outcomes. Housing is an essential component of a complete community, and many, many other important reasons. However, all organizations have to ensure that they are holding the line from a financial viability perspective, and therefore one of the fastest ways to get housing solutions and actions to the top of the pile is by connecting it to economic outcomes. Luckily, the economic argument for affordable housing is very strong, including attracting and retaining a local workforce, and the savings in publicly funded services that are realized when people are stably housed instead of being forced into a situation where they're sleeping rough in parks or in emergency shelters. Another learning, strike while the iron is hot. The growing need from across Canada has garnered a level of strong political will and public support for housing that we haven't seen in decades. The time to meet the challenge is now. And speaking from my own experience, the will to take housing action right now also means that there's rarely enough time to get everything exactly lined up perfectly. Bringing me to my last point, letting go of perfect. We need creative solutions immediately, and not just creative solutions, but any solutions. There will be challenges in executing plans, especially as we're challenged by the fact that housing is really a long-term issue. Housing expert Steve Pomeroy summed up this situation really well when he was talking about the economic payoff that comes with immigration that is also taken alongside the pressure of a growing population that puts on the housing supply. Pomeroy said, "People can jump on a plane this morning and arrive in Canada tonight, but we can't put a house on the production line today and have it ready by tomorrow. It takes 2 or 3 or 4 years to do that." So the housing sector is under pressure to get programs and policies online that will help, but it's not a quickly solved problem. So my point is, don't let perfect become the enemy of good in bringing these solutions forward, especially when time is of the essence in helping people get stably housed and we have the political will on our side. As an example, I liked what the University of Calgary did this year in addressing their student housing shortage when they put out an appeal to the public to consider opening their homes to students for room rentals. So I'll conclude with saying that I am learning more every day about the housing issues that we're faced with and what we can do about it. And it's an ongoing learning process that can never happen fast enough. However, if there's one takeaway that I could emphasize from my experience, it's that achieving sustainable solutions to housing and most other social issues requires a collaborative approach, where we're leveraging resources like funding and expertise and capacity that come from both within and outside of our organizations. I want to thank the team at RDN and the audience for the invitation to come to speak today, and I welcome any questions or general comments or reactions that you may have. But just before we get to that, I would also like to take a moment to recognize the tremendous work that was done by the team at RDN, and specifically thank the project leaders who worked with me and who share the credit for bringing the successes that I described in my presentation to the City of Airdrie. So thank you to Sean Adams, Kieran Frame, Kabir Shahani, and Asad Badi. Excellent job, RDN team. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for your excellent presentation. Housing is a ubiquitous issue that affects almost every community in Canada, regardless of size or geography. I'm sure many members of the audience will be very inspired by what you've accomplished in Airdrie. But I know some of you might think, oh, Airdrie, it's a big city, 80,000, but so many of the lessons that Jessica shared can be applied to any community. And one of the things that they really did right too is they got ready. And that takes a while, but if you're ready to seize the opportunities when they come, like the half, you know, a lot of communities should have been able to access that, but couldn't because they weren't ready and it was a really tight timeline. So you got to be ready when the opportunities present themselves so you can take advantage of them. But we do have a few minutes if anyone has any questions for Jessica. Oh, we've got one. So the question was, how long will Airdrie have to wait before they hear about whether they're awarded the half funding?
That's literally the multi-million-dollar question. We've been in touch with CMHC. In fact, I met with them yesterday, and they said that they were committed to getting announcements out by December 31st. So far we've seen one with London, Ontario, and we hope that we are, you know, it couldn't come soon enough. So hopefully soon.
And, you know, I like to think success begets success, and you're already a rolling ball of success. So more to you. I am going to put, you know, someone on the spot. She'll probably kill me, but I just wanted to say that Sandy Price is here from CMHC, but she cannot answer any questions. She cannot tell you anything, but, you know, we greatly appreciate our partnership with CMHC. They have been a huge asset and great support for lots of the projects that RDN has been involved in. And, you know, we appreciate that you took the time to come out here today. Are there any more questions for Jessica? Okay, well, as we wrap up today's formal program, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for your dedication to rural issues and for your presence here today. I know you all have busy schedules and you chose to spend some time with us. I hope you found our theme, which I know you've learned many of our names are very long because we like them to be descriptive, but our theme of empowering rural and Indigenous communities, building stronger futures together. I hope that has resonated throughout all the presentations you've heard and has underscored the importance of unity, collaboration, and empowerment. I'd also like to express my sincere appreciation to RDN's dedicated staff who have worked tirelessly to make the RDN and this AGM a success. Your commitment to rural Canada is the backbone of our achievements. Working with and learning from each of you has been an incredible opportunity, and I have greatly enjoyed getting to know and collaborate with such dedicated people. Your hard work and many achievements are the reason I've been at RDN for 15 AGMs. But I am sad to say that this will also be my last AGM. As many of you already know, I'm leaving my position with RDN at the end of this month. It's bittersweet for me to tell you that I'll be moving to Vancouver to take on the position of director of the UBC Botanical Garden. So while my journey with RDN may be coming to an end, I am excited about my next chapter and also to see where the RDN goes next. A new leader will mean fresh ideas, and I'm very excited to watch the RDN continue to thrive. It is my baby. I've been here since the beginning. I've watched it grow up, and I really want to see it successful in the future. So thank you everyone for your dedication, your inspiration, your support, and your friendship. I look forward to seeing the continued positive impacts of all of our collective efforts. And now I would like to invite our board chair, Kevin Shufflebotham, to say a few words in closing, not in clothing. He is in clothing though.
Well, thanks so much, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to say a few words. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to connect today. I don't know about you, but I was sitting back there, and there were so many touch points for the work that Rural Development Network does. Truth and reconciliation, dementia, housing. These are issues that just they really truly do impact me in my personal life and journey, and I know they impact Alberta and across the country. So with that, I just want the RDN staff to know what you do really matters. It really makes a difference, and if it didn't, I wouldn't be here. And I just want to say thank you so much for that. The other piece I just want to say is, as wonderful as the staff are, Deanne, you've been an incredible leader. And I heard a quote once that said, it's important to leave the garden nicer than you found it. And Deanne, you have left RDN, if it was a garden, way better than we found it. So with that, thank you. And I hope everybody has a great day. Bye-bye.
So thanks everyone. I guess we're going to say goodbye to our virtual guests. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. For the rest of you who are here in person, we're now going to have some networking. There's food, there's some things to drink, there's a cash bar. So please stick around, get to meet the other people in this room who are all working on similar issues as you, and enjoy a little discussion and talk. And thank you so much for coming.